Hey guys, just a quick update before the video starts, which is admittedly quite impromptu. Starting next month, I'm going to try and do 2 IRL videos a month, and this is what I got planned here. And before you ask, yes, I need a shower, I need a shave, this is a Gary Newman shirt, eat my ass. Oh, and enjoy the video. What the hell happened to Arashi? I've been on a big VR2 kick since I got it this past Christmas, and one of the games I was pretty excited to try was Arashi Castles of Sin Definitive Edition. Originally it was on PS4 for its own VR mode, and then got its own Definitive Edition for the PSVR 2. But when I was looking through the store, I noticed it had a lot of negative reviews, mostly 2 and 1 stars. I still gave it the benefit of the doubt because it's one of the few sword fighting games, at least that I've seen, for that system. It's warranted. In case you've not seen anything or heard anything about it, it's a ninja game. What more do you need to know? In all seriousness though, it could have had so much potential. The story itself isn't that in-depth. It does have actual characters and lore to it, and I believe it is based off actual events. So first, gameplay. How this works is if enemies aren't directly looking at you or if they don't hear you, you can kill them instantly, in most cases. So for example, you can just stay in the grass, wait for someone to come over, you shank them, they're dead. End of story. If they hear you or if they're suspicious, just be careful, but they will still go down one hit. But if they do see you, you get into a sword fight. This is another thing that's kind of busted, but I don't think it's a huge issue. In theory, you can just sort of cheat the game, just so that your sword will always technically hit the opponent, even if they're trying to guard. But where's the fun in that? Do it properly, man. And on top of the weapons, you get certain abilities. Namely, you get Jitsu, which allows you to see where all the enemies are in an area, even if they're through walls. It's very useful, especially if you don't have great hearing. And of course, you get chakra jumps, or just jumps in general. The way these work is that you hold up on the right stick, look in the direction you want to go, and off you go. You can also run in the game, but that does increase your chances of being alerted. Which makes sense. You're a ninja, not a goddamn samurai. And the objective of each level is to get to the boss. And as you go through these levels, you can find one of 3 things as you travel. Spots to dig where there's gold, trees that have been blighted by Orochi, or notes left behind by your cousin that detail pretty much all the bad shit that these guys have done. I haven't got every single one of them yet, but from what I know, it's not terribly important. We'll get to that later though. So like any good ninja, you get to use a katana, you get to use a tanto, as well as these following items. Bet they sound familiar, don't they? So let's go over the good things first. The game itself actually looks pretty damn good, even for a, 5-year-old game? Editor, correct me on that. Thank you. And it actually plays pretty smoothly. There weren't a lot of actual bugs, I will go into that later, but it was pretty solid, it was very stable. I think I only had it crash once on me, but that was it. I think the biggest appeal though, you get a doggy! Haru! Haru is actually very useful in the game, if a tad annoying. What you can use Haru for is to not only dig up items that are buried, you can also distract enemies by having her bark at them, or she could just outright bite them and keep them in place. Another thing with the game, like, the weapons and everything else are actually really fun to use. The enemies, admittedly, are sort of stupid, but they kind of have to be with how the game is. And something I think the game does really, really well is boss fights. There's 6 boss fights in the game, all of which having their own unique properties. If you ask me, the hardest boss was the previous one, because bro just spams fans at you, which you have to parry in order to continue the fight. It's metal as fuck, but it's so hard. So I got most of the good out the way. Let's talk about the bad shit. So the first issue I had with the game was, one, you always started out with your ninja sword, which, fine. But the thing is, you have to wield a tanto at the same time. Now, why is this an issue? You can't put the tanto away. You have to use it. And similarly with the grappling hook, you also have to use a tanto. You can't put it away. Then again, when you're trying to do shit like this, it's fucking badass. Another thing about the game, though, is that some items, these specifically, are mandatory placements. So with sword, it's always at your right hip. Your grappling hook always on the left hip. Bow and arrow always on the left shoulder. And your handgun over the right. It doesn't sound that big of a deal at first, but you have to remember, not everyone's right-handed or left-handed. And there, as far as I'm aware, there's no way to change them. So if you're a lefty in the game, you're fucked. I've said before that the game is quite stable. It does suffer from invisible walls quite often. So when you're trying to get an actual accurate shot, it can be hard to because you don't know what's going to be in the way. Let's talk explosives now. These things are broken, and not in a good way. Anything you can throw in the game, except for shuriken, can only be thrown underhand. You try and throw it overhand, it ain't going anywhere. Hand grenades in this game are indicated by a red seal, and you have to throw them underhand. And with landmines, toss them on the ground, someone walks over it, boom, dead. As they should be. So why are these an issue? The blast range. You could be so far away from an enemy, nay, even from the explosive, you will probably die or take a lot of damage. But most of the time you'll die. When you're trying to be a stealth game, the last thing you want to worry about is not being out of range of your fucking explosive. I have to say, one of the most useless items is the poison food, which is naturally onigiri, or rice balls in case you weren't aware. How these work is that you throw them on the ground within eyesight of an enemy, and the idea is that they'll get distracted, go eat, they'll feel sick, and therefore you can off them in one hit. Here's the issue though. There's so few times you'll actually need it, and there's so few times you'll actually get to restock it, at least from what I've played through. So the only time you're probably going to have to use it is both in the tutorial, or if you literally have nothing else to use. But the biggest issue I have is the ending. Nay, the whole game by the end of my playthrough. I'm a very forgiving person, so I could forgive all of those aforementioned problems and glitches if the game ended on a good note. It didn't. It kind of gave up by, I would say, the third chapter at the earliest, but definitely by the last. So you come across the final boss, who is an actual demon. And he is one of the hardest bosses in the game, solely because it's a completely new way of trying to fight someone. You can't just hack and slash away at him, because he is all armor. What you have to do is stun him, and just try and stab his severed arm. You do this, I think 3 times if I remember correctly, and then it doesn't sound hard at first, but it's trying to get everything down to a T that makes it a little bit harder. In the end, you just climb a snowy mountain while Orochi talks shit to you, and right up at the end, you find your dad's sword and he tells you to go kill Orochi for the clan, and then the game just ends. Nothing was resolved. Maybe I didn't get all of the treasures or beat the game hard enough to get the proper ending, but still, like, if that's the first ending you get, then it feels like it was all for naught. It's so dumb. I don't know what happened. I'm not sure if the developers just had to crunch a lot of their time down, or if they just fell out of love with the project, but ending on such a flat note is a big insult to how cool the rest of the game is. What could be improved upon? I would have loved an Orochi fight, or any kind of yokai for that matter. You could have easily had a Gashadokuro. You could have had a Yukionna. You could have fucking Kusarigado from Samurai Showdown as a boss. That would be cool. But, no. And you want to even been cooler? Ninjutsu.
Katon. Gokame Kek.
I know it's supposed to be more realistic and that, it's not a Naruto game. But still. Why not just use a fucking fireball or something? Or make a wall out of the ground? That would have been so cool. This game could have been so much more. And I'm really sad it wasn't. But that's life. You can't always get what you want, and in all honesty, I'd still give the game a generous 5 out of 10. If it wasn't without bias, because I love VR, it probably would have been a 3 or a 2, at the very most. But I'm no VR developer. I don't know fuck shit about game development, much less VR. But that's only my opinion. Please tell me if I'm wrong, or if I didn't play the game enough. Either way, this has been Brothers Doodman. I'll see you later.